Welcome back, everyone. We are here for another Mondays with Micah. I have a very special guest here for you today. This is Gwendolyn. She has been on at least one of my videos, but she was with a group of people that I got to talk to this spring. We can get into that. We don't have to get into that. I feel like I ended up scheduling this group for my own therapy due to not knowing at the time that I would be walking through another loss with you. Lovely. That was a lovely time, wasn't it?
It was nice.
Yes. It was still learning myself how to do a group and what are the needs of the group. I would say I'm still in the learning curve, a part of that. But having a place to consistently come to in the midst of walking through hard things is helpful and was helpful for me. And it gives you kind of a reason to get up, if you want to say, and get dressed and know that there's a place for you to be. We were doing that at the YMCA, so Gwendolyn already goes there and so it wasn't really out of her routine, but it was an additional group that kind of happened after you were working out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or before.
Yes.
So how did we meet?
2 years ago on the Fall Festival on Main Street of downtown Franklin.
Excellent. So this is the beginnings of the Widow Walk, getting out in the community with a booth. Gwendolyn came by and she started coming to our monthly meetings pretty quickly.
Yes.
And she would bring her son, and so she is one of the widows in this group that has children that they're still raising.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was special to me because you really don't, how do you find the widow? How do you find them? I'm really not knocking on each church congregation and say, hey, can you tell me how many widows you have here? Can you tell them that I have a group? I really didn't want to go that route. So what did we do? We went into the community, and every booth that we've had, and we just did this again in October, I had 11 widows sign up. And so I've been checking on them. Some of them are from Suffolk. They're not all local here because they came really just to see what was at the Fall Festival, get out of town. We got to pray with a lady, hear some different stories. The presence of the Lord is always there, and it just, every time I get out in the community and have an opportunity to engage with the community and meet other widows in this community or surrounding, I walk away that day feeling so blessed. So blessed. And it just continues to confirm to me to keep going. To keep going, to keep engaging, to keep doing sometimes what feels a little silly, out of my comfort zone. I will tell you that day that Judy Hawkins Dunn was there helping me, and we had in previous months, I think we made some stickers. We got some stickers made. And instead of sitting behind in our chairs and just kind of waiting to see if people kind of came into the booth, she got out of the booth and started passing these stickers out and said, do you know a widow? Please give this, pray for the widow, and gave them this sticker. And just her making that move to step out of our booth or tent, things rubbed up. More engagement happened, more conversations happened, people started coming more into the booth. So can you speak into just what that meant, you walking up that day? And I mean, there's a few widow groups around, but not really that much. And how long had you been a widow when you had walked up to that booth?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, I was new to Franklin, had just moved here, so there was a great feeling of, how am I going to find just someone to talk to? But on that particular day, it was a beautiful day.
Yes,
as
it
I
was.
recall. The weather was lovely, and I was looking for, I guess, friendship. Now, I will mention that my church has just been so supportive of us.
Awesome.
It doesn't have anything, I think, to do with being a widow. It's just that they were so welcoming to us to come into the community, and that has meant the world. But to see someone out there saying, oh, me too, I kind of understand what it is. Right now, I'm a month short of being a widow for 9 years. So Christmas is a particularly difficult time for me because that's when my husband died and when we had the funeral. But it was such an outreach, and the things that were being said were like the yes, yes, I know that, and what are we going to do? And I have found it's just like a real lifeline thrown out.
Wow.
And I wouldn't have said to someone, I'd like a friend, or I'd like to know more about this, because I'd had people step up, but they had their whole lives to go on with, and I had to somehow pull it together. As you say, I have a child. He's never going to grow up. He's a special needs child, and so every day, the biggest thought on my mind is, I've got to be careful and not let anything happen to me, because who's going to look after my baby who's much taller than I am?
Yes.
So it was just a good day. I like fall. I was speaking earlier and said, you know what? I never thought when I was young that I would somehow get older. And I'm 68.
68, looking very beautiful with her luscious long hair. And so would you say you never thought you would get to 68 because you had walked through losing parents at a younger age?
No, I just thought 68 is incredibly old.
Of course. 68 to our younger selves was ancient.
Yes.
And as we get older, we're like, maybe it's not so old. Maybe
I need to, I think, reach 101.
Wow, I love that. Now, there was one other lady recently who's 91, and she said, I don't know if I'm going to make it to, I said, man, if you're going to keep going like this, she said, I said, do you want to make it to 100? And she said, well, if she doesn't decline much more, then yes, she would like to make it to 100. But if things start kind of going, she doesn't want to make it to 100. So only the Lord knows that moment for her, but she's still walking. She does have oxygen. So there's, a couple of things, but not fully inhibiting her. So with those 9 years, I know that while we were meeting at the YMCA, you mentioned walking through some different losses and some kind of harder losses. And I think you even mentioned some things about death by suicide as being part of that story a little bit.
Yes.
Now, that was not, those words, that's a new term that I have learned. That is a more kinder way of saying it, or a more compassionate way of saying it. But at that portion of time, had you been around anything like that?
I don't think so. But in my little Appalachian area, suicide is probably still a very negative perception. And I know for my father, who did decide to end his life, that he firmly had what I would call older traditional beliefs. And even at his funeral, people were like, oh, where are you going to bury him? And it's like you can't put a suicide in with everyone else because the sin that they created is so horrifying. And I thought, I don't feel that way. My dad made a decision, and I didn't pick up on it enough to save him. I felt a lot of guilt about not understanding my father's grief. My mother had died, I guess, a couple of years before. But suicide needs a great deal of understanding. And we can't be afraid to say, I am so sorry for your loss. Because whoever we might be talking to, they likely still have that thought of being ostracized or in some way ashamed or guilty. And a big thing that made a tremendous difference for me, and I know this can't be everyone's option, but I took a death and dying class as a guidance counseling student.
Wow.
And it was spot on.
While in college?
Sort of. I was in graduate school.
Okay, yes. And how many degrees do you have, ma'am?
Possibly 4 and some certification in education. But the worst thing about the class was that several of the class members said, oh, I know someone. This suicide thing really needs work, because I know for one young man, he missed a class, and we were like, oh, you're going to be missing class. She knows us all. And he said, my brother, I've been taking this class, and I missed it. My brother committed suicide just last week. And it brought home to me some of the things that I had felt, and has made me, I hope, more able or more willing or more proficient in saying, I'm so sorry for your loss, whatever it was, wherever it came from. It's important that you know that others care.
That's good. That's good. So we do have a previous episode, I think back in May, where I sat down with a counselor that is working on writing a book. She also lost her father and has started, she's a counselor as well, and kind of more in the trauma-informed type of things, but has, just like with any of these things, it's interesting how life does that. I said, I don't want to say it exactly like this, that an addict finds an addict, but there's something inside of us that I can peg a widow pretty easily just walking, and it doesn't mean every gray-haired woman who's walking along, oh, she's a widow. But there are ones that I would go up to them like, by the way, can I ask you, are you a widow? And they said, yes. I'm like, well, how did you know? And I'm like, I have a sense inside myself now, a sensitivity. And I don't think that fully means that there's a sadness inside of all of us, and that's what's drawing me. But there's an awareness is really what I would call it. A sixth sense now. I believe the Lord really gave that to me. Maybe to push me out of my comfort zone, to engage with strangers, if you want to say, in the beginning. But He's not a stranger to them, and that brings me comfort to say, even though it may be a stranger to me, you may be a stranger to me in the beginning, the Lord knows our name. And He knows every hair on our head. And it is an interesting topic because the processing of grief, and maybe you can speak into this too, and we're still under process. We're still processing grief and how we experience grief and how we identify with it ourselves. If there's ones in our family who didn't respond well to loss, and she has alluded to that a little bit, it can make the process of grief harder because there wasn't space to really have the conversations openly. Can you speak into that at all?
I am just thinking back. My father's death was the end of my family. We spent the next, I guess, 4 years in court. And it certainly wasn't the way my parents had thought about it, had planned about it. But, you know, if you ask me now, well, how many brothers and sisters do you have? My answer is none.
Wow.
2 of them died, and there's one I'm ashamed of. So that was it, you know. And I never said to my sister, how could you give him a gun? I ask you to take them all away, which in my mind would be the worst thing that I might have said. But I never said that. And yet I feel like I lost everything. And I can understand my father's fear. I think the reason for his suicide was that he had been diagnosed with cancer. And a lot of his friends had died of cancer, and my mother had died of cancer, and I had a sister that had cancer, and I think it was just hearing that word. And he lived alone. He was perfectly capable, perfectly healthy, but his going ripped a hole in, I guess, the whole family fabric.
Yeah.
And now, if someone says to me, what is it that worries you the most, that grieves you the most? I don't have a family.
Wow.
I have a needy son, but I have no brothers and sisters. And you could say, well, maybe you have nieces or things. No, I do not. I mean, when the family broke, it completely shattered.
Wow.
And I think I've heard a few other people say, oh, my son is just being awful, or I can't get my daughter to understand. And so I think it's either the grief process or the shock.
Yes.
That it just leaves you almost unable to speak. It's certainly unable to explain why it happened.
Yeah.
And oh goodness, it just has left a big hole.
I think the shock is the right term, really, because when things that you never expected to come into your stratosphere becomes a reality, it becomes aware to the receiver whether you feel prepared. And how can you prepare? I've heard that. And even this spring, when I was after my father-in-law passed, this group saw me in the lowest day I really had. I felt that the emotions were going to tip, and I was trying to get out of town before that happened just to reset. But we had this group going, and I didn't feel I was supposed to cancel it, because part of my heart is that the real and raw of it all is to be that I'm not supposed to just always be the spokesperson of joy or whatever perception may be, that I'm still in the thick of it as well. And I was feeling pretty heavy, and the two thoughts that came to haunt me, if we want to say, they did not stay. But the interesting thing about grief is that there's some dark thoughts that bubble up to the surface that you really don't know are inside you. I think a lot of people, to be honest, stay busy to not think about it. And what I'm here to say is there's no right way to do this. There may be things we do that we wish we had done different. I'm not going to say right or wrong on any of it. This is all a learning process for us all. And as we grow, we can share what we know with others, and maybe they can skip a few of the hard steps that we had to take. But the two things is that I had never in 8 years really had the thought that my husband left me.
Oh, goodness.
And that came after my father-in-law passed. So it took multiple losses for that thought to come up to the surface. And then the second thought was I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to face burying my father-in-law beside my husband. What 40-something-year-old is supposed to experience that at this decade of life? And the interesting thing, I was talking with a friend who, it's like we're younger, but then we have friends that are a little bit older than us and still have all their grandparents, still have their parents. And so it's like she kind of dealt with things kind of early, but then the latter part of her life, she doesn't have to work through the aging parent season and how transitions and all these things that maybe people in their 60s are starting to deal with because their parents are in their 80s. And so it was like she kind of got it out of the way early, but she only really has one close family member. Her father is the only one left. And so she's lost her mother, she lost her husband, she's lost all the close people. And it's fascinating. So now on the other side, she can speak into the situation for her friends where they couldn't speak into it for us because they really had not gone through it. And last night, we had my Bible study here, our church life group, we call it. And usually there was a lot of people, and last night there wasn't, and it was just the 4 women that were together. And I said, I think tonight we really just need to worship and pray. And something that came out of my heart in the form of, while worshiping, was that the pain was worth it. And that's an interesting statement. And why do I want to bring that up here today? If it wasn't for Jesus taking the pain in our behalf, we were worth it enough for him to sacrifice himself. That is a perspective that I'm trying to sit with and realize that whatever pain in our life, and it's not to compare the pain, but I know that I'm not stripped naked, being ripped to shreds and flogged. So the measurement of that pain, I'm not here to measure your pain. I'm not here to measure her pain. But what I'm trying to do is use the pain for purpose and to give the pain back to the Father and say that whatever has to come, I'm going to give it back as an offering. And I believe that we serve the great gift giver. And that the more I offer over, he gives us something better in return. He can give us. Some of us may not ask. Mm-hmm. And through these interviews, I continue to hear widows say, ask. What's the harm in asking? What if they say yes, Gwendolyn? What if they say no? And it's really continued to embolden me as I hear these women that have traveled and done some pretty bold things. And we still have to get into her story of some of the bold things that she's done, that it's worth pursuing. So what bold things did you do with these degrees that I feel like you kind of did not follow the path of your siblings or any of that? What made you pursue these degrees, certifications?
My mother. My mother. My mother was an educator, and it used to be a big thing about all the people I knew, all my friends. They go home and their mom would have things, and I would think, gosh, we are so poor. In my family, both my mother and father work. Mm-hmm. Well, I got into doing genealogy.
Wow.
and asked my mother things, because she'd always been not only knowledgeable, but, you know, pretty kind and gentle. And she told me that I might not want to really do that. That there were things, well, don't ask my grandmother anything. And what I found out is that my mother was very fortunate in life. She had gone off to a missionary boarding school, which was the best that our area offered.
Wow.
And she did so well as like an 8th grader that when they didn't have a math teacher, they would send her in to teach the older children math, and then just have another teacher do the discipline. But my mother would actually go in and teach it.
Wow.
And so when she got to high school, and my grandparents agreed that she could go on to college, and she went to Berea, which is a quite well-known Appalachian mountain sort of community and college near Berea, Kentucky. And at the end of her freshman year, some people came from Chicago and asked her if she would quit school and come and be a chemist for them.
Wow.
And so she went home and she told her father, and he never let her go back to school again.
And she didn't get the job either?
No. She was just maybe 19 years old, and he's like, you're not going off to the northern cities and you know, and weird people, and this was just old mountain folks, and we didn't do that. And so my mother never had a moment that she didn't say, now when you get to college, you'll want to, but there was never a thought about going to college. And so off I went, and I liked it. And
wow.
Well, I had to have my car, you know, so I could go home. But my mother was just, okay, you know, the bills are paid and for books. And it wasn't a matter of getting a scholarship or anything. But I was still thinking, you know, gosh, we're so poor, you know. My parents both have to work. And my mother works during the summer. And so I was still at that needy person goes to college, and I didn't speak in college because I tried saying something to a professor once, and he's like, honey, where are you from? And after that, I knew that I didn't talk like other people.
Wow.
But so I did college, and I came home and I taught, and my mother spoke to me about 3/4 of the way through the school year and said, I want you to go back to school. I don't want you to stay here. And I thought, oh, my mother doesn't love me. She said, I can see you aging. And she said, there's so much more that you could do. I want you to go. And don't worry about what it costs. We'll manage.
Wow.
Now, I was able to get scholarships then, but whatever it was, my mother just always said, well, you know my address, you know my phone number. And my mother just kind of
Prodded you
put me out there.
Yes.
And then when I got to teaching again at, I don't know, all the places, I still had that little Appalachian girl thing about how can I go so far away from mommy and daddy? So I went to Montana, and my mother said, this is good. I've never been to Montana. And she got a package of 10 airplane tickets, and she came out to Montana and visited.
Wow.
And then I moved to Oklahoma State University, and my mama said, I'll be there to see your new house. And so I was doing well, but my mother never stopped saying, this is good.
Wow.
When my mother came to see me in Oklahoma, I had 3 or 4 bars of soap, just like, you know, a well-prepared person. She went one day to a discount store and bought me 30 bars of soap, and I still have some of that soap now.
Wow.
But my mother was always there. And in time, I came to realize, because her father had said, you can't go out there. that she had pushed me out there and said, "Fly, little bird."
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, what a beautiful, that's the history.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of wanting to uncover the history, and it was a little bit of a pain point in her history to not really want to uncover it for you, maybe. But then to know the brilliance of a female mind. I'm not women's lib, but I do want to empower women because here we have a real life story of where a woman was thriving. Okay, her mother was ahead of the class, and people saw that. For someone of that age in that time to have someone pursue you, which I mean, chemistry, I can't even. My brain, that's not me. So I respect anyone that has that type of brain that can get into science. And really, those are the ones solving health crises, and they do the research. I mean, these chemists do research. They're not just college professors. They're actually in there studying to help us. I mean, like, I keep seeing articles saying, like, there is a cure for cancer. Like, we're on the cusp of these things. And will it happen in our lifetime? I believe so.
I think it already is happening.
Yes, I agree.
When my mother was dying of cancer, she said, "I read the morning newspaper, and you know what? They found a cure for the cancer I have. I wish they'd found it earlier. I'm not going to make it."
Yeah. Wow.
And they have.
Wow. And you know, cancer is a very precarious. It's very no respecter of person, age, creed, and so that there is a fear. Cancer has a fear component, and so to know, as she mentioned earlier with her father, that there was a history of seeing people die, and I'll tell you, Gwendolyn, that when they use that term with me, I really had to have a come to Jesus moment and decide, was that diagnosis or that term? I had already faced death with other people, and I realized that I don't fear death. But death by cancer, that came into the stratosphere. That wasn't the way it was before. So I had faced death, but not with that attachment. And I really have not had any family members per se die from that. Now, my grandmother passed after my husband did, the year of COVID. And they had diagnosed her 4.5 years earlier with pancreatic. That usually is a death sentence, and you're gone in a year, typically. Well, her pancreas never hurt her, and it had spread to the lung. They had found both 4.5 years earlier. But the chemo and different things that she did, this was a woman who almost had too much penicillin, almost, too much. She went in for a surgery when she was younger, maybe a hysterectomy, I don't know, but they gave her too much the anesthesia. So we would say we're lightweight when it comes to taking on drugs. This woman took chemo like a champ. It was shocking to us when we had been hearing these past stories of her minor stuff and it being a lot. And then she did that. She said, "Well, I did what the nurses told me to do, drink and walk." And she would feel a little bit off, but nothing. And so for 4.5 years, she did 2 or 3 different kinds until it finally stopped working. Now, we know people that have said, we wish we hadn't done the chemo because it really went downhill after they started some of it. But for my grandmother, we had her for 4.5 years, and it was the lung that ended up kind of congesting things. And so I got to see the resilience of a widow. She was a widow for 23 years. And and we got to be with her. So I did have to cross over seeing someone die with something that metastasized in their life. That still didn't scare me for some reason. And then when it happened to me personally, I had to decide who was going to get the final word. Was I going to lean into the fear? And I said no. Actually, heck no. So this fighter continues to rise up inside of me that cancer's not going to get the last word. And I am thankful that I had a gentleman I had never met before that knew my parents, and in the process of me going through some of this, I don't know if my dad called him or he called my dad out of the blue, and my dad shared with him because it was heavy on his heart. And this man drove from Charlottesville to come here and pray for me, and said that he had prayed for other women with breast cancer, and when they went back for their scan, they found no tumor. So when moments like that happen in your life that I didn't ask for, I wasn't praying for a stranger that I've never met before to drive to my house. But when people feel the unction of the Lord to be obedient to something, I had already been through surgery at that point, and he came, and my parents were here, and we prayed. And all I can say is it was a 30-minute time, and the intensity in the room increased when the man came in the room. And I believe something happened. And so for me, I have to walk in the truth of what happened that day. And not everyone gets a stranger that is willing to drive to their house and do what he did. But I'm just letting you know that I could have even discounted that, is what I'm saying. That the fear can get so loud that we don't, even when people go out of their way to help us, that we can undermine that if we allow the thoughts in our head to win, or that we come in agreement with that. And so I still do have to battle the fear, the probability of reoccurrence. People saying, well, you may not die of breast cancer. It's when it comes back somewhere else.
Yes. I'm trying to think. My sister that might have had breast cancer decided she didn't have it. And so she won a malpractice suit.
Wow. What?
They couldn't find it. And so, I mean, she was treated for breast cancer. She had a mastectomy. She went through these horrible infections from the ports and
after the fact, she felt like she was wrongfully diagnosed?
yes, she never had cancer.
Oh my. And she won.
She did, and she built herself an in-ground pool.
From that pain and suffering.
Yes.
Is that punitive damages? Is that what they call that? Recompense?
I don't know. It was a sealed thing.
Wow.
And I didn't want to ask her too much. But I remember them saying, you'll never guess your sister has a pool. And I was like, well, they're kind of like me and wonder where they got the money. But she had won then a malpractice suit, and that she spent the money on an in-ground pool. And she just laughed. But my sister always just laughed and said, we'll get through this. And we always did. I can remember going shopping with her and my mother and her daughter, and we decided we'd all wear hats because her hair had gone. And so we all just wore hats and had a good time.
Right. And learn how to continue to live in the midst of things happening. And I've had some friends right now who lost their hair, and her hair's coming back kind of curly.
No. My sisters came back just real thin.
Yeah, not quite.
But long. And you know how they say people have these red-headed stepchildren? I had 2 half sisters, and they were redheaded. But her hair came back about like mine, so she did fine.
And so here again, these stories that we don't know overlap. The Lord is allowing me to run into people that actually understand.
Yes.
And understanding seems to have to come through living. And some of these trials that we go through is not really things we wanted to have learned.
I can agree with that, but I'm trying to think of how it is that I get up each day, and my church has just made it all, okay, this is what happens, and it's not the end.
That's right.
And you just kind of go on, and they're like on a vacation. And my son said, Daddy's gone off to be on his Navy ship, but he'll stop in when he comes back through. And I think even to this day, my son feels like his dad's just gone somewhere.
Right.
One time his dad went to California to see his mom, and he said, but he'll stop in here when he comes back. And I go to the cemetery, and I give my husband a talking to. When are you coming back? But my faith believes that you've just gone on. And in fact, you have been here doing a service to the Lord and helping out with the world and doing a path, and now you are rewarded by being allowed to go home.
Right.
So he told me once, that he'd have the mansion ready when I got there.
And that's scripture. Now, you mentioned that he did pass, December will be 9 years. Is there any tips you can give those watching? I know for me personally, the holidays are harder. What I have articulated is that it's not that every day isn't a remembering, but when the holidays have deeper memories of gathering, of events, of opening the presents, of things coming together. Every day may not have as strong of a memory of what he did on a Tuesday, but you can remember what he did on Christmas. And so that is kind of how I'm articulating why is it harder? Because the absence of them is more real in the holiday time. So where you're able to just get through March, April, May, whatever, this time of year has a little more weight to get through it.
Yes,
Can you speak into that at all?
Well, I can't say that I've been very realistic about it, but basically, we haven't skipped Christmas. We just do it elsewhere. My son likes to do things that I do not care for, but I'd never been on a cruise, and so one year, this is when we went on our cruise. And he wants to go out deep sea fishing, which is not my thought, but that's probably what we'll do this year. And we have been to the Smithsonian Institution and Mount Vernon. We go places to get away from the place. But my son still has a couple of Christmas trees, one for the house and one for his desk or computer. And we do that, but we just kind of quietly sneak away. And that helps because, Dad's not there, there are no grandparents, there are no brothers or sisters, there's just the two of us getting through this. And it doesn't hurt as much, but I remember Rose Kennedy once being asked, and she lived to be 104.
Wow.
About some of the loss of her children and, the assassination of her sons. And she said that it was like any wound. You grew a scar over it and you went on. The scar was there, but the scabs had gone away and there was just a little tiny scar left. And you just went on. And I keep her in mind I can't say that I identify strongly with her. I never knew her, but I have always reflected upon that. And my mother also had this idea, you make a decision, you take care of it. We talked once about having children, and she said, you do what you want to do, but you don't have a child until you can take care of it, until you have a job and you can look after it. She said, if I tell you anything, that's important, that when you make a decision, you honor it. And, I wanted my child very much. I had no idea that his dad would leave us. And there are times that I am angry because I feel like my husband left me. And I don't know if he'll be there when I get there, but I hope he will.
And those are these mystery questions. And, my heart wants to believe that, the scripture says that all have sinned and fallen short. And us as humans want to measure what the sin is. That some sin seems more blatant. And there is some teachings out there that suicide is irrevocable or something like that. I don't believe I've read that in scripture.
No.
And so, or something like that. I've heard anyway, that some people would say if that's your choice, then you don't get to go to heaven. I don't think it's any of our place. We're not the judge.
No.
And
I don't agree.
I don't agree
think
with
that's
it.
how it happens.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. I think I don't really fully know, but my heart does not feel that is correct. And so again, back to the point of we can't measure the sin, and death by suicide is a mental and a hard place. But here again, she got to share, and that sentiment came when I had the previous interview as well, how it affects the family. The person's trying to stop their own pain. And in his case, maybe the inevitable cancer, the playing out of the cancer. I can't speak into why he did what he did. And if he was trying to save himself from future pain and the suffering stopped quicker when he could control it versus waiting to see how it played out in the human experience. Some have pretty tough cancer stories.
His was not too bad. It didn't go away, but it could be cut out every 6 months or so. And he went through a couple of 6 months, but it was annoying. And then there were, I believe my father was afraid at night because the neighbors would say that they saw the lights on or they would see him get up and walk out. And so I think he just became afraid. I think someone had talked to him about religion and had frightened him.
Wow.
But whatever happened, whatever he did in his life, I did not know about it. And in my faith, Jesus did atonement for our mistakes and our sins. And so that took care of it. All he's asking is that we walk the path, we do the best we can, that we serve the Father, and that we have kindness and acceptance. We've been talking on Sundays about what is acceptance of others, not judging them, just welcoming them in. And so in my mind, I sure am sorry I'm missing the good fun times. And wouldn't my father have been so tickled to have a grandson because I had the only one. And I wish he could have seen that, but he could not see that there was a future. And he said a lot of ladies stopped him in the grocery store and just talked to him, and he did not want another wife. So he still had his sense of humor.
Yes. And these are just the human experience, Gwendolyn. I appreciate you sharing, the different things. And even with your son, I think there may be somewhat of a grace because maybe his capacity, and I like to call these kids more divergent, in some of their thinking, that he's able to process in a way that his dad is on a trip and he may come back again, which is a kinder storyline than he's never coming back. That feels very final. So so there is mercy in that, I believe. And it even says in the scripture that Jesus asks us to come to him like a child. And sometimes we get so in our heads theologically, or so serious as adults, or wanting to have these answers, where these kids are just more curious and staying more open to what the answer is, instead of wanting the answer to be what we want the answer to be. We want him to validate what we believe is right, or what we believe is how we've been wronged, for that matter. Where the kids, I feel like, are just more, can you speak into that? Like, just what do the kids carry that as adults we sometimes lose?
Well, I think that in some of the studies that I've done, it's much like parents getting a divorce. What did I do that made my mom or my dad leave or get the divorce? And you have to really connect with them to say, this is not your fault. And it's not anything you did.
Yeah.
And when my husband died, my son was there. And, I had to turn to him and say, well, it's nighttime and daddy's gone, and we'll go see him at the funeral home, but we need to go to bed. This is really late. There's school tomorrow. And you have to kind of, I guess, model for them that we can do this. We can cope. We can do things. And I still have, I guess one of my big regrets is I got rid of too many things too quickly. But I still have things. And my son is now of a size that he wears his father's jackets and coats. And that, I think, has made a great deal to him, that, dad may be gone, but, look who's boots somewhere.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
He talks about the things that his dad had for him, all this camping things. I'm not a camper, but I go because that's what a single parent does.
Yes.
There's no other options.
Right.
And so it's out in the woods, and if there's skunks or raccoons or anything else like that, I'll be right there with the flashlight.
Well, all I hear is bravery here today, that, she has this son who's got this adventurous side, and even if she would have liked to prefer someone else to take him to do it, the Lord has left her with him. And that means that she's more than capable. You're more than capable. And that's the resilience part of ourselves, to continue to step out into lands that we haven't walked before. They're not comfortable. We don't feel that we're very versed in these things. If you're vulnerable out there. And to be vulnerable feels sometimes a little unsafe. You don't feel assured within yourself. But what I encourage people is, the first time we're not going to be, but maybe the fifth time you do it, all of a sudden you start to get your footing. And you're like, okay, maybe I can do this. Okay, I wouldn't do it this way the next time I do it. But then your mind starts to think about, well, if we go again, let's do it this way. And then all of a sudden you start to find the system that works for you, and you get braver and you get more resilient, and you realize, hey, I had a widow friend who bought a van to do this little camping pop-up on the back of her van. There's a name for what they do. It kind of attaches to the back of the van. There's a name for it. I don't know, and she fell while she was out there. Slipped on a rock and broke her collarbone. But there were some other ladies out there, and they helped do everything. Mm-hmm. And so it was one of the first trips she took at this level of staying overnight and the whole thing without her husband. And then something kind of unfortunate happened. But when she shares the stories of how people came in the clutch that she didn't know, strangers, and took care of her, it was a more meaningful experience. So she didn't walk away with, I'm never doing that again. This is what happened. She was so overwhelmed by the love and support of these ladies that were there that it changed the whole experience for her, that she has since done it again. And so I just want to encourage you here this holiday season that if you've had previous years where you did something without your spouse to try to get your feet wet and it didn't go that well, to do it again. To try it again, because you're not in the same place as you were a year ago.
No.
And it's okay to make mistakes on a land we haven't traveled before. There's some bumpy roads. There's some curves. Sometimes when we're on these roads, you're looking down and there's a cliff. And that guardrail really doesn't make me feel like it's protecting anything. So there is these metaphors in life where we're walking roads that seem pretty steep, pretty hairy, not a lot of support on either side, and you think to yourself, can we make it to the top? And my answer is not alone. But we're not alone when the Father's with us.
We're not alone.
We are not alone. I have more songs that continue to find me about You're Home to Me, and songs about home and presence and walking through things where you're wanting that person to walk through the door and they're not there. And so there's that choice inside to say I'm alone, but this voice or the source keeps reminding me that I'm not. And so I have to silence the voice that says I'm alone to remember that there's more than meets the eye. Mm-hmm. Well, Gwendolyn, this has been beautiful. Thank you for sharing your history with us, the hardship, the accolades that your mother believed in you and continued to let you be that little bird that kept pushing herself out. And now she can say that she taught in multiple places. She can't say that she has multiple degrees under her belt and certifications. She can say that she's gone on a cruise. She can say that she may go deep sea diving. We don't know what she's going to do next. So if you want to hear more stories for Gwendolyn after this holiday season about her Christmas adventures, then please comment below. I want to get some of these ladies back because I know that they have more to share. And this, as long as we're alive, then there's stories to be told.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Well, do you have any final words, or we're just going to wave goodbye and say, see you next time?
I think one thing that helps me kind of at the side, unspoken, is that there's possibilities. You know, like I want to live a long time and look after my child. And so my Aunt Lizzie lived to be 102. And my great-grandfather lived to be 97. I think I have good chances.
Strong stock.
And I'm still chasing after my family tree.
Excellent. So there's longevity in her history, and if she's only 68, that means she's got 35 more years to go, and it's worth pursuing the possibilities of what adventures are ahead, to be open to that, to believe that her health can sustain her, to make good choices. Y'all, get outside. This fall has been so beautiful that we've had some really good sunny days. It has been so bright since daylight savings has happened in the morning. I'm telling you, just 15 minutes is good for the soul. It's good for your digestion. It's good for your lungs. You get your eyes in sight of the sun. It's good for your mitochondria. All that helps your circadian rhythm wake up inside. And what happens? You woke up again. That is nothing to take for granted, to take lightly. We were given the gift of another day. What are you going to do with the gift of your day? What are you going to do in your day to give a gift of someone else? I am starting to believe that you're a gift, that we're a key to unlocking each other.
Yes.
There are things inside her story that help me identify part of myself and words that I couldn't articulate. But then after her sharing, then some words that she says say, man, that feels true to me. And I couldn't figure out how to say it. And so those are the parts of it that I have to continue to pursue, because language is a beautiful, is really, there's all these love languages, but what I'm trying to say is that language is worth loving. It's worth learning about. I'm not just talking about different dialects or different languages, but that there is communication is a high thing to value. And a lot of times we can get lost in translation with each other. But when we're here to not just hear what they have to say, but to learn about the other person and to stay open to the thinking, the stories, the experience, regardless of creed, regardless of background. This is not a white or black thing. This is not a Republican or a Democrat thing. I am in the place in my life, Gwendolyn, that I understand there are sides. And I have a side. But I want to connect with people on what we agree on. Mm-hmm. I don't want to spend the conversations anymore about what we disagree on. It doesn't mean that they're not part of us and we think certain things. And I'm not saying I want to negate, but I have come to a place that I want you to know what I do like more so than what I don't. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of conversations when we're passionate about certain things, that we want to talk about politics, we want to talk about health, we want to talk about all these things, but then what we realize is when I leave those conversations, if you ask me, well, what was her favorite ice cream? I have no idea. The only thing I can tell you is what she voted for or didn't vote for. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that information, but I really don't think I'm getting it to the heart of the person. Unless that's your full-time job and you're very passionate about that. So to say, no, don't talk about your 90% of your life, only give me the 10%, there's something to be said for that. Mm-hmm. But there's more that connects us than not. And that has been what has become more curious for me in the different Muslim, all the different religions, if you want to call it, or practices that people have. That I grew up with the same people all the time. Mm-hmm. And then I don't feel very qualified to get outside of that and to talk to other people because I don't understand their ways. And if I don't believe their ways, then why would I hang out with people that I don't understand? That was a limited thinking. Mm-hmm. That's a limited belief within myself that I wasn't open to. And through work and my vocation, he's allowed me to get in touch with so many different people and so many different backgrounds and so many different countries that it has made me more curious to get to know people, not for what they're known for, maybe their job, but for who they are. And that is the beginnings of this whole thing, is just learning people. Mm-hmm. And so if you see Gwendolyn out and about, please give her a hug. As she has said, it's really her and her son. And I believe that she's in the process of building that support team. I'm so thankful for her church. And what church do you go to?
I go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
They have been there to support her. And so we thank them for bringing her in and loving her in the way that they have done. That is really a big part of our community, is all the different churches here that are supporting the community. And we have a lot of churches around here.
We do. We're so fortunate.
Yes. So where there's one for you is what I'm here to say. There are so many options that you can find what fits for you. So again, the holiday season's coming up. Check on a widow or widower in your neighborhood. Take a little something by. This time of year is harder, and they need the support. What they're not going to ask for it. I'm the one with the big mouth asking you to give it for me to them. And so we can do that. It really goes a long way. I think it puts a little extra pep in your step.
It does. It really does.
So thank you, and we will see you next week for more stories from widows and widowers right here in Franklin, Southampton. Bye-bye.